Beach FM, locals talking to locals.
Let's have a chat to our local MP for Mana, Kris Faafoi. Welcome.
Good morning, Corran. How are you?
I'm extremely good, and I've really got my fire up about this airport because I'm just still so totally gobsmacked by Air New Zealand's decision to can our flights. What are your thoughts on it?
Oh, look, I think I share your disappointment about the lack of community involvement before the decision was made. I think I share your frustration. I saw you there on the day that the open day was had at the airport. Obviously, with Air New Zealand quite happy to showcase one of its planes, but then to have it make a decision 2 or 3 days later to pull its services was obviously disappointing. And the fact that I think that the community wasn't involved in the lead up to that. I'm not sure if we would have had any influence to change that decision. But I think the priority for us now is to look forward and I think make sure that we have got a service at Kapiti. And I think obviously there's an option or the possibility of another carrier going in there and filling that space. And I think for a growing community in a growing region, we need to make sure that service is there. And I think those discussions are going to be had by obviously Property, who is the owner of the airport, but also I know that the Kapiti Coast District Council, I met with Guru on Friday, trying our best to make sure that the service remains, and I think that's the most important thing we can do right now. I know it's disappointing that Air New Zealand, our national carrier, has made a decision, but getting an alternative service in there for the community should be the absolute priority.
So is there anything that you as part of the government, or the government in fact, is able to bring any pressure to bear on Air New Zealand over a decision like this?
Look, again, being frank, I had a conversation with the Air New Zealand Chief Executive, Chris Luxon, and I think while the decision is disappointing, I think that we've got to be realistic about this, and I put the question to him, what the chance of this decision being reviewed or turned around, and they've made a commercial decision already. That's why I think the frustration comes in that we weren't told of the fact that they were going down this road a little bit earlier, but as I say, the most important thing now is I think Kapiti needs an airport. If you look at the future of the region as an asset and an important piece of infrastructure, we need those flights going in and servicing the community, because once Transmission Gully is up and running, our community is only going to get bigger. A slightly different take on this that I think I'll be making sure that the owners of the airport might be aware of is also with my civil defence hat on just how important the airport might be in the event of a regional emergency. Because about 2 or 3 months ago we saw the front page of the Dominion Post talking about how the region could be cut up into 7 different islands if an earthquake could happen. Now, I've seen some work that's been done to show just how important that the airport might become to getting services in, getting people out if there was an emergency. So I think we're going to be having discussions about, of course, the service, the transport service in and out, the flights, but I think the community shouldn't forget. And I think the government won't forget, and the property owners, property who own the airport, shouldn't forget that as a community part of infrastructure for the region, just how important that airport is.
Everyone keeps talking about alternate carriers, Kris. How likely is it that another carrier is going to be found? And if we do find one, who's it going to be? You know, we can't get Virgin flying in and out of here. We can't get Jetstar in and out of here, can we?
No, I don't think so. One has been proffered up, and I don't want to get ahead of things here on your show, but there is a potential alternative, and I think that's why in the short term we've got to make sure that the council and the airport are all of a mind to make sure that there is a service, so we can convince a carrier that might fill the gap that Air New Zealand has just vacated, will think it's viable and good for their business as well. And I think having had a chat to Guru on Friday, and his team are working hard behind the scenes to make sure that for a growing region there is service in and out of Paraparahumu and in and out of Kapiti, so that, for economic reasons and for reasons of convenience for the community. And I think layering on what I've just mentioned in terms of it being a pretty critical piece of infrastructure for the region in terms of an emergency, that the airport remains an airport, but we've got to get obviously a carrier over the line and convince Todd, who own the property, that the airport should remain as an airport servicing the community. But there are a lot more ducks that need to be lined up, but I just think that I reassure that the leaders of the community are doing all they can, and I think obviously Peter is taking a leadership role there to be able to make sure, that we can convince the carrier to stay, and convince Todd Property that it's in the community's long-term interest, and with their business, it's in the long-term interest that the airport stay as an airport.
And I really acknowledge you for making the point about it being a civil defence or an emergency advantage to us as well, and something that's vitally important for the community. Yeah, that's great.
That's right. I think it's just another layer that I think those who are making the decisions and the commercial decisions also need to factor in as well. And I think it's the one that the community should also be mindful of and make noise about too.
Kris, that's quite encouraging. Thank you so much for putting that perspective onto it. And here's hoping that we're able to find ourselves a replacement for Air New Zealand. And chances are it'll be a lot more reliable than the Air New Zealand service has been, because, to be honest, they've been the author of their own demise.
Look, I think when I had a conversation last week with a couple of people from Air New Zealand, I asked the obvious question about, the viability of it. And the issue that they were raising was capacity with their own logistics. So, without getting into too much detail, being able to get the flights going. So, I don't think, by the sound of things, bums on seats were the issue, but the reliability of being able to get the flights moving in and out on time was the issue. So I guess that's one approach you can take. I just think now that, if they're going to be blunt and say this is a decision made, then all our effort needs to go on to making sure that an alternative is there.
Absolutely perfect. All right, Kris, you have a wonderful day, and thank you for being there, and you just keep punching your weight, or above your weight as you do, to keep Kapiti and this district uppermost in aviation minds.
Thanks, Colin. Fingers crossed,
106.3 Beach FM.